We're going to look at two things really quick, one thing, and then we're going to get out of here and we're going to look in the landscape. What I hope you get out from this today, especially in the landscape. You saw the clues in the house, right? And you saw how those clues in the house can be used to put back an interior, what we call an authentic interior. Those same clues exist in the landscape, right? One thing I talk about at Adena, you cannot put a shovel in the ground at Adena without pulling up artifacts, whether it's metal or ceramics or something. But everywhere on this property that people inhabited, they drop and broke stuff, or they had buildings, and that stuff is, the clues to that are all still there. We're going to leave here and quickly go out. It's really hot, and you're really tired, but you've got to, this is it. You've got to make a big push at the end of the day. All right, this is what we're doing. We're going to look real quick at some stuff about the house. We're going to go out and look at the landscape. And we're going to look at some of the evidence that you can still read into the landscape with stuff that's not restored yet. All right, and then we're going to go into the house and we're going to see what you looked at. Now, last time I gave them a huge tour of the house and talked about it. What I'd rather do this time is kind of walk in the house and have you guys, if anyone has questions, what I'd like you to do is point out the things that you see in the house that you remember from the slide. Can we do that? So I'm not talking so much, and it could be more interactive. And then we're going to do this quick because you got an hour. Did you look at any plans of the house like this? You talk about what everyone here know how to read an architectural plan. Architectural plan is a drawing that describes a building as if you took a chainsaw and you cut through the building about 4 feet off the ground, right? Label all the rooms and look. You looked at these rooms. Is that right? Well, we have at Adena, which is a very unique building in Ohio. It's a building designed by Benjamin Henry Latrobe, who was an English architect, the first professionally trained architect working in the United States. He had theories of architecture that he wrote about. In Adena, you can see some of these. One of the things he wrote about is that he hated the Virginia plantation system of having all these multiple dependencies. That to run a house like Adena, like this is one house, right? It's for one guy and his family. But to run this house requires a massive system outside of the house of people doing everything from making butter to putting up ham to cleaning the laundry, right? And this all happens by hand. It takes a lot of buildings. What Latrobe said is he hated this idea of buildings. They were like suckling pigs onto a really nice house. What he's done at Adena is the servant rooms, which is about an 11 by 20 foot room, which would be very typical of a Virginia slave quarters, right? The servant rooms here have been stuck up on the house. So these things, which in Virginia, would have been here, boom, 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 boom. Here, they go from, a spot up here and they get stuck on the house. But it operates as a separate house for a family, probably of 5. We know that one of the first guys to come to work in the kitchen, the chef, had a family of 5, probably lived in this room. Again, a servant living in this room. What these do in these wings, these are service wings for this main house, where you get a block of public rooms and a block here of private family rooms, with these 2 wings, again, which in Virginia would have been somewhere down here, now brought up, attached to the house through this thin corner. But the other thing we have in the landscape, this is a plan of an archaeological dig that was done in the late 1990s. All of these squares are an actual hole that was dug in layers and then documented. And what was found here is a large barn, a 40 by 60 foot barn existing. The house is somewhere up here. Here's an existing smokehouse, a barn and a privy. This area between the barn and the privy, this was a work yard. Adena, as designed, is basically divided down the middle, not really in the middle though, between 2 areas. There's a served component and a servant component, right? Everything associated with servants on the property faces the west of the property and the west of the house. The areas that are the family areas and the places that serve the family are to the east. And what you have is a landscape where you have this negotiation between served and servants, right, which move from this area into the house. In an architectural plan, it looks like this, where you can think of the house just like being this, right? The reality is the house is 3 times that big with all of this needed to take care of just a few of these rooms. All right? We're going to go out and look at this today. One of the things we're going to look at is what this area may have looked like. This is a picture of a work yard taken in 1936 in Texas. And this is about what a work yard would have looked like. Okay? With these large copper kettles that would have been kettles used to boil down soap or sugar. In an area, this is what the work yard at Adena looked like at the turn of the century. Not that different, right? Will you give me that? Right? Today it's very different because it's all been beautified. But it was an area used for work. These are foundations that were located in 1950 on which the wash house that exists out there today was built. This is opposite. Here's a picture of the gardens in 1860. To the east of the house, what you get, we're going to look at this briefly today when we're out there, but an exterior entry, or a door here that goes from the family side of the house out into the garden, out into the east side. Anyone know what this is? It is the seal of Ohio. Anyone know why it's important here? It is. I mean, one thing you look at the landscape. The landscape here, right, is tied to things we still have today. The seal of Ohio is a view from the front of the Adena property, right? That these things, the landscape, that when you look at them, they're still active. They're still with us. We inhabit landscapes that people inhabited 100 years ago. Though they constantly change. But those changes we can point out. We're going to go out and look at that. Right now I want to read something to you about these kettles. I'm going to go back up here. So one of the things is, why do you think Adena looked like this? This is a diary entry from Monday, February 23rd, 1801. It says, "This day, very pleasant weather, but windy, some rain at night, warm and foggy. Sent Adam Gillifin $3 paid by John Hattie, 112.5 cents and 37 cents for his brother-in-law, Thomas Dobbins, 112.5 cents for carrying chain and marking out Mr. Ross's land. Purchased a kettle of Mr. Hubert, account, 61 pounds at $6 for Hannah to boil sugar in." Now, when you're walking around the property and we're looking at the work yard, you're not going to see this, right? But the kettle still exists. And it's out there somewhere. And that's one of the things I want you to look for when you're out. See if you can see it, right? See where you found it. Because what I would say is there's a lot of things very authentic, especially in the interior of that house. You're going to walk through a house that is, I think, one of the best house museums that's been done in, not just in the state, but in the country. But the exterior has a long way to go before I would say it's authentic. Though kind of the pieces of that, the ghosts of the authentic exterior are still there. All right, that's it for here. What we're going to do is walk out and get going.